This is Recovery Lifestyles with Carmel. Recovery Lifestyles is committed to raising awareness and ending stigmas surrounding addiction and mental health. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Jessie, who has 6 years of sobriety. She has an associate's degree in addiction studies and is a certified alcohol and drug counselor. She has also been a manager in an intensive residential treatment for the past 2.5 years. Hey, Jessie, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So thank you so much for taking the time today to come on and chat with everybody. So I just want to get right into it. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and your story.
Okay. Sure. So I am, when I was growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 7. My mom had a really bad drug and alcohol problem. Just like anybody else, was a very good person, but was very sick. And when my parents got divorced and we went and lived with her, and then my dad wasn't there to kind of try to keep her in line, she got really bad, really fast. So, long story short, it was childhood trauma because my mom just left us home alone all the time, and we didn't have food in the house. And when she came home, she was really messed up and she got kind of violent sometimes. And it was always chaos, and it kind of gives you that. I explain a lot. I'm a counselor now. So I explain to a lot of people who don't understand that children don't always get abused physically, and the damage is just as serious, because when your little brain is developing and the environment is chaos, you get traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
You learn to be a very hypervigilant adult, a very anxious adult. I'm sure you're familiar with the term ACOA, obviously, and adult child of alcoholic. So
I was going to say, for the people listening, they may not know that term, but thank you. Yeah.
There's a set of traits that go with that. And a lot of that is, distrust in relationships and codependency and hypervigilance. And, so I ended up with a lot of that stuff. My mom got worse and worse. I moved back in with my dad when I was 13. I took my sister and left my mom's house and walked 20 miles in the middle of the night from my mom's to my dad's after she passed out one night, and showed up at my dad's house and just said, "You have to take us. We can't stay there anymore." And so we did, and I'm sure it was tough on my dad raising 2 girls, but it was better there. But when I was 17, a month before my 17th birthday, my mom killed herself.
Wow.
So that was a month before my junior year of high school ended, and I already smoked a lot of weed by then. And then after that, I got into drinking, even though I had sworn I'm not going to be like her. I'm not going to be an alcoholic. I'm not. And then, when you start drinking a lot in your early 20s, you don't realize that you have a problem a lot of times, because everybody's drinking a lot in their early 20s. But alcohol did something different for me than it did for other people. And in that it took away that thing that had been hurting me, that void, that feeling. And then I got into pills. I got into Adderall really bad. And then Adderall led me to cocaine. And, by the time I was 29 years old, and I had a son when I was 25, so he was about 5, I was bartending. I was 105 pounds. One of the last things that happened was, before I was trying to go to work one day on 2 hours of sleep, still hammered, still all messed up. And I could not put my eyeliner on because my hand was shaking so bad. And I had to go get vodka and drink vodka. And it was 9 a.m. and I just had one of those moments where you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I don't even know who that is.
Yeah.
I don't even know who that person is I'm looking at. This is disgusting. Like, I am everything I didn't want to turn into. And what that means as a byproduct of that is that if I'm everything I didn't want to turn into because my mother's sickness hurt me, I'm doing to my son what happened to me. And my son one day is going to come to me and tell me he hates himself. And it's going to be because of my addiction, because I hated myself. It's not my mom's fault.
Yeah.
But it's what you go through, and the messages that you receive as a child. You just start internalizing, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. Because if I was enough, my mom would be home. She would spend time with me. You don't know when you're 7 that it's not that,
Yeah.
And I thought, and also by this point, a year before I got sober, my uncle, my father's only brother, had also killed himself almost on the same day that my mother had, because of his addictions. So I thought, I'm living with what drove my loved ones to kill themselves. I'm living with it. I wake up every day and I know why they did it.
And how old were you at that time when you were starting to internalize those thoughts?
After it happened with my uncle, really, because I really went off the deep end again, because it hurt so bad to lose somebody that way again. Because I mean, suicide losses, it's a totally different monster than any other kind of grief or death I've ever dealt with. And they were so close to me, as my mom and my uncle. So the last probably year or two of that, I lost my marriage. My husband and I split up. We lost our house. I was living in another one of the bartender's basements on an air mattress with a hole in it. And, I knew because it got to the point where I could no longer convince myself I was having fun. All the way up to, for a while there, I could convince myself that when I was sitting on that bar stool every night and I was hanging out with those people and I was doing whatever I was doing, that I was having a good time. And by the end of it, I was like, I also knew, I think that I knew if I was going to do something about it, I was going to have to stop drinking. Yeah. So my life had to get so bad that I was willing to. That's hard when you're 28, 29 years old to say, I might never be able to drink again. Yeah. When everybody in your life drinks.
Well, I know, because, it's such things are starting to change now, but I know for myself, when I came in to the program, I was 24 years old and I thought, now what? Now my life's going to be absolutely boring. Yep. What am I going to do? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, how am I going to talk to people?
Yeah.
How am I going to socialize? That is my confidence. I was always so shy. I was so insecure. It only got worse. And I was always so tense and anxious. And when I put alcohol in my body, I went,
I can feel what you're saying.
And then you're going to tell me, I knew I was going to get told, if I go get help, I'm probably not going to be able to do this anymore. I didn't know anything about the treatment process. Obviously now I know a lot about it because I work in the field, but I didn't know anything about it. And I called my ex-husband because he was, we weren't together anymore, but we were together for 10 years and I trusted him and he knew me. And I knew him, and I went to him and I said, you've got to take me to talk to my dad. Like, I have to get help. I have to get help. I'm so sick and I can't stop. And I had started doing cocaine, and that was the one thing, even through all my partying, I managed to not do it because my mother had such a bad cocaine problem and I was so anti, but I had to start snorting my Adderall. And once I started snorting my Adderall, what's the difference now? Yeah. I'm snorting a drug. I'm snorting speed. And so I went to treatment, and I've been sober since. There is not relapse in my story. That's just how it played out for me personally. And I believe that is because when I went into treatment, I just said, please just tell me what to do.
Yeah,
please just tell me what to do.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is that you hit that bottom. You hit that low that was so painful that there was no turning back. Mm-mm. So, and you were 28 years old at that time, you said? I
was 29. I had just turned 29. I just turned 29 a month before my sober date's actually coming up. It's July 30th.
Oh, congratulations. And how many years?
It'll be 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah, it'll be 6 years this year. So what I run into a lot with people who do not stay sober after treatment is because a lot of people come in and they put contingencies on what they're willing to do and not willing to do. And I didn't care. I just was like, I have driven my ship into the rocks.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get it out. So whatever you tell me to do, like, I'm so full of self-loathing and pain. Just please make it stop. And I don't know how to fix it. You do. So I wasn't somebody who was walking into treatment like, I'm not into the 12-step thing. I don't want to talk about the abuse I went through. I'm not willing to, because you hear a lot, people have to want it, which is important, but wanting is not important. Willingness is everything. Willingness to do things and to experience things, to do things you don't want to do, to not do things that you're used to doing. I think there's a lot of people who want their lives to be better in their addiction, but they're not willing to confront certain parts of themselves.
So in your treatment, was it a 12-step based treatment?
They did have some of that. I went to a hospital in Chicago because it had a detox program. Unfortunately, with the way health insurance is, they only gave me 9 days of inpatient treatment. And then they said to put me out and put me in outpatient. but there was some 12-step based stuff in there. So they had outside speakers come in and do like the H&I or whatever. And then I moved into a recovery home in Chicago. I'm about 40 minutes south, so it's not far, but I just didn't feel ready to go be back around where I had just been 9 days later. And what the counselor told me, this is what's best for you. And I said, okay. And luckily for me, with it being my first time asking for help, with it being, you know, my dad watched my mom drink herself to death and then kill herself. And this was terrifying for him to see his firstborn going through the same thing. I hadn't burned him a million times with a bunch of relapses.
Yeah.
So he said, I'll help you. You know, you need money to move into the recovery home. And I'm so grateful that my dad and I are like this.
Yeah.
And he's, you know, he's everything. So he helped me out. My ex-husband and him and my ex-husband's family stepped in. And because I was a mom the whole time, I wasn't a good one.
Yeah.
But my son had not been away from me like this. So that was hard too, but it was necessary for me to be able to be a mom. And that's something I tell women all the time when they're coming to treatment and they're like, I got to get out of here in 14 days, or I can't go to the women's halfway house because I'll be away from my kid. And listen, you're not with your kid right now. I don't care that you're home in the house with them every day. You're not even, oh, I don't do it in front of them. Oh, I don't stop.
Yeah, that is powerful, because I'm thinking back
affecting them.
Yeah, my 17 years ago for myself, and
yep.
I refused to go to detox, and I actually got out of going to detox. And I just think now how, my reason was because I did not want to be separated from my child. I did not want to lose my child. But you're right, I wasn't even present.
No. And what I also tell people is losing my mom, if somebody would have come to me before my mom killed herself and stopped time right there and said, listen, if we take your mom right now and we have to take her for like 2 years, we have to keep her for 2 years, you don't get to see her.
Yeah.
But then she'll come back after that and she'll be better. Would you be okay with that? Take her for as long as you need her. Because my mom was not there for my wedding or for my son, or to see me get sober and maybe have learned that she could have done it. I would have gladly handed her over to make her okay for as long as she needed.
So do you believe that I know that I hear you saying how it's a pattern, right? You were repeating the pattern of what, you didn't know how to break the chain at that point.
Yep.
Did you feel guilty? Did you take responsibility for your mom taking her own life? Maybe without even knowing it?
Yeah, I felt like, what if I hadn't left? Because I did take my sister and leave. I was the older child, and I could not watch my mom abuse us anymore. Mostly that wasn't for me, that was for my sister. And I thought one of the things I really struggled with was, I don't know what thing is worse. If my mom didn't think about my sister and I and then put a gun to her head, or if she did think about my sister and I and then still put a gun to her head. Both of those things hurt so bad.
You just can't go there. I mean, but how do you not know not to go there when you
can't.
Yeah.
You can't. And this is why suicide grief is a whole different monster, because there is all of this. What if I hadn't? My mom died the weekend after Mother's Day, and the last Mother's Day that she was alive, I didn't visit her because my boyfriend at the time was in military school, and I saw him instead because I thought, I can see my mom anytime. She lives 20 minutes away. And we had plans the next morning, and instead I woke up to my dad saying, your mom killed herself last night. And I had an ice cream cake in the freezer for her that said, Happy Mother's Day, Mom. It was, which then made Mother's Day obviously just a huge drunken mess for every year after that. And there's always guilt, but now thankfully, because of my own alcoholism and then my own recovery and looking back and working through allowing myself to be angry at her, because I did a lot of, well, she was sick. Okay. But she still she could have tried, and I have to allow that. I did it, which means you can do it, which means you can do it. And she didn't. And it hurt my sister and I. And that was something I had to work through, that anger, and figure out how to let myself be mad about it. Yeah. I didn't have a childhood, and it messed me up, and it caused me problems for years. Mm-hmm. So but sometimes you have to reconcile with people who aren't there to reconcile with, you know. There's a lot of people who get clean and they're looking for that absent parent's approval, or if this person would just love me the way that I picture them loving me, or it's like, listen, man, sometimes you have to get that.
The whole codependency thing.
Yes,
oh my goodness.
Exactly.
Were talking, yeah, you and I were talking about that earlier, about that whole, you know, you get into recovery and you get into a relationship.
No, and it's
Oh
always it's always like you see the guy in the back of the meeting who's nodding a little bit with a neck tattoo, and you're like, I could love him better. It's always like the worst idea in the world. Like, you look like you might ruin my life. Why don't you come over here and sit next to me? You know, it's like, now thankfully, it's like, I don't want a project. I don't want, you know, in our codependency, we seek that out because then we don't have to look at our own shit. We don't have to look at it. Because you're a worse mess than me, or because this relationship is such a mess, I don't have to then deal with all of my problematic behaviors. I can just fixate on this.
Or it's such an addictive, magnetic, you know, attraction that you just destroy each other by going into each other. Oh my goodness. I know. I've seen this so often. I mean, I was a part of something like that in my early recovery as well. And I just don't know how. I always say to women and girls that I sponsor, and I just always say to them, you know, just give yourself some time. Give yourself some time to get to know who you are. Yeah. You know, clean up. Find out what your patterns are, and you will be amazed at the man that that will come into your life when you're healthy. But you know, it's hard, I didn't listen.
No, I didn't. It's hard though, because when you're alone, the stuff in your head gets really loud, and and it's so much easier to distract yourself now, especially with the social media and the dating apps. It's like ding, 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 constantly. It lights up the same stuff in your brain. And when I was a year sober, you know, they tell you don't wait a year, which they should tell you wait 5, because I was still a lunatic after a year. I was like a live wire, a raw nerve with all this stuff. And on my 1 year sober, I met this man. And I thought, oh my God, this is the universe. Oh my God. Oh, it was the universe. All right. It was the universe saying, oh, I'm about to give you one of the worst human beings you're ever going to meet in your life to shine a spotlight on all of the things that you thought you fixed. And I got involved for 3.5 years in my recovery with what I now know to be, and I know more about it than I ever cared to, a narcissist. And
we are such magnets. Again, you know, it's like there's a sign on our head that says, if you're a narcissist, please come play with me.
Yep. And it's like, if you've never dealt with one, it's hard to explain one to somebody who's never been around one, because you sound crazy, which is what they count on, because they gaslight. And it's like, you sometimes can't explain the abuse because it's so insidious and underhanded. But it forced me I got to a point where I went, wait, this relationship makes me feel like I'm in active addiction.
Oh, wow.
You know, the shame that was going along with it, and it was destroying my self-esteem, and it put me in such a state of anxiety because of all the lies that I kept catching, and I don't know what's real anymore. And then I would say never again. And then he would convince me to come back, and I would drive away from his house feeling like how I felt when I would go back to pills after trying to be off of them. Like, what are you doing? And you're supposed to be clean and sober and better. And I felt sick.
So I have a quick question. I know you're you're a professional now on a lot of this, and you've done so much work and research and, you know, in the field doing this. Do you see any of the patterns of getting into a relationship with the narcissist to your mother? Do you think your mother might have been a narcissist, or is that?
I don't think she was a narcissist, but she was 100% emotionally unavailable because of her addiction. And a narcissist is always going to be emotionally unavailable because they're missing a thing. They're missing like a big part of the human component.
I've spent way too much time trying to figure that one out. I don't know what it feels like not to feel everything.
Yes, and that's what I kept struggling with, was my brain can't even comprehend that that's real. That somebody could be so cold, and that somebody could derive pleasure from creating pain in somebody. That's so far removed from what I am. And not that I've never created pain in people. I've made mistakes.
Yeah.
But somebody who is an energy vampire who draws, like, because they don't have it, so they need to take it from other people. And it's a sick thing to get involved with. And I don't throw the word monster around, but this man was a bad man, and he destroys women. And I've become very close, a woman who's become a very good friend of mine who reached out to me because of one of my videos. And I had met her because he used to like to have some of us women in the same place at the same time. And we wouldn't know until it was like,
you all.
Yep, it's triangulation. It's creating that competition. And her and I are very close now. And I cannot tell you how grateful I was to be able to sit, and it's like one alcoholic helping another. Not only someone who knew a narcissist, but somebody who had been with him specifically. And to be able to like talk about what happened and like this, and she would be like, you know what, to have that moment of like being understood in something that made you feel so alone and so isolated. And that was amazing for me. Amazing for me.
I think we could do a whole show or series on narcissistic people behaviors.
It's so traumatizing. It's I can't tell you how many relationships that I have just not been able to participate in the right way since then, because it is so hard on your trust. It's so hard on your trust, you know? And so, but just like losing my mom, just like I don't regret any of this stuff, because what I gained from that is now when I have a client come through who's dealing with a narcissist, I have that.
Yeah.
I can help them with that. And I know how hard it is to feel understood when you're dealing with one. So when I'm able to give that to somebody else, that's huge for them. That's huge for them to have somebody there who says, you're not crazy. There's this set of behaviors going on. I just had this happen with a girl the other day who's in there for her third time, and she just finally talked about the husband who's been the good guy every time she's come to treatment.
Isn't that typical of them?
Yep. And
like in that type of relationship,
of
for
course.
Sure. Yeah.
And I started reading to her without telling her what it was. It was a list of traits of a malignant narcissist. And I just started reading it, and she started sobbing. She was like, that's him. He does that. And this and this. And I told her, I said, honey, this is what you're dealing with. And those people don't get better. This isn't depression. This isn't anxiety. This is a personality disorder. It's a different thing. So was it fun for me to learn about suicide? No. Was it fun for me to learn about narcissism? No, I hated every second of it, but it gave me things, you know, it gave me knowledge that I could make myself a victim and feel sorry for myself and never heal from those things. Or I could say, this bad thing happened, but I can do good things with the bad thing that happened.
And that's exactly who you are today. I mean, the things that you have been through and what you've been able to create in your life going forward is absolutely inspiring. And so I just thank you again, you know, for coming on today, because people need to hear from people like you. If you know, if there's one thing you could tell someone who may be struggling out there with any type of addiction, what would you want to share with them right now?
You know, I think I would say the thing that I've been focusing on, and I just did one of my little videos about it, is you don't have to know what to do right now when it's really bad, when you're in the worst of it. You don't have to know how to make things better. All you have to do right now is stop making them worse. Stop doing the things that make it worse, which means if you can stop using, you don't know what to do yet, or you don't know how to get away from this relationship or heal from it. You don't have to know all that yet. Just, you have to stop making it worse. Yeah. And then you can start figuring out how to make it better, you know, but just make a move, because when you start, momentum is a big deal. And when you get your momentum going in the other direction, things can start changing, you know? So whatever the first step is that you have to take, whether it's telling the truth about the abusive relationship you're in, or going and asking for help, or going to a meeting, putting the drugs down, whatever it is, just do that. You don't have to have all the answers right away.
So if anyone out there is listening would like to connect with you, how could they do that?
So I have a public Facebook page, and it's under Jessie, and then it's R.B. And that is video blogs. There's like essays on there, just recovery related stuff. So either you can direct message me on that, or I also have a blog site that's called won'tstaydown.com. And that's got a couple of my blogs on there. There's not a ton on there yet, but once I finish with my last week at work here, I'm planning on, trying to get my content back up there. But there is an email address linked to that. You can contact me through my blog site, won'tstaydown.com as well. So
awesome. Yeah. And underneath this video, I'll have all your links available for people
Perfect.
To reach out. So
okay.
Jessie, thank you so much for taking the time again today.
Thank you.
I feel like this is super valuable, and I know that whoever is meant to receive from you is going to. And so again, just thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was really nice talk.
Yeah.